The horror of London's rising knife crime hit home to Aussies this week with the insane and inexplicable stabbing of an 11-year-old girl from New South Wales in Leicester Square in the city's centre while she was on holidays with her mum. The 32-year-old man from Romania appeared in court Thursday charged with attempted murder. Here's how the UK's GB News reported it.
She's now been identified as an 11-year-old with a mum tourist from Australia. Now, that is, what sort of signal does that send out to the rest of the world? And I was looking, in last year, 1.2 million Australians came to Britain last year, spending £1.6 billion. They're a huge part of our tourism.
And weren't Australia one of the countries that did put out a warning about travelling to the UK because of the riots and things like that? So it's just, you just can't imagine, can you, going on holiday, taking your child to queuing outside a Lego store.
I can imagine it, actually. I've been a tourist in Leicester Square with my daughter when she was a little girl. This is a trauma that's going to impact this child and her mother for years.
She was stabbed repeatedly in the face and in the armpit, and it was a security guard nearby who disarmed. Well, I think he literally sat on the attacker and for 4 minutes until the police got there.
Young lad called Abdullah.
That's right, and he's been hailed a hero. It's an extraordinary story, but what a terrible thing for Mum, who was covered in blood as she was trying to save her daughter.
She was trying to protect her child. It's just the absolute horror of it, and that excitement of coming over on a holiday and this happening, and it's just, how does this happen? How is this still happening?
She's going to need plastic surgery because she was held in a headlock and stabbed 8 times with a steak knife.
Unbelievable. 20 years ago, this might have been one of the biggest news stories of the year in both countries. But it comes just a few weeks after 3 little girls were stabbed to death by a man from Wales in the northern English town of Southport, sparking violent anti-immigration riots across the country. While it's simplistic and silly to blame immigration generally for increasing crime in our two countries, and equally simplistic and silly to call the rioters and protesters far-right racists, we need to have a conversation about the complex causes of this alarming rise in knife crime and social tension. And yes, too many, too fast immigration is one of the causes. And no, it's not racist to say that. But the problem is much broader and deeper than just that. It's the ideology that permeates our politics, government, media, arts, approach to religion and God, education, sexuality, and even our view of the family. The wider ideology that underpins all policies and public and social debate, including, but certainly not limited, to immigration. Our societies are sick. We're not as bad as the UK, sure, but we're not very far behind. And the common thread is a decaying of traditional and, dare I say it, conservative values. In fact, I was taught all through my youth that conservative values were bad and backward and sexist and racist. And I'm not suggesting we return to any kind of sexism and racism here. But we may have thrown the baby out with the bathwater in becoming more progressive. Many conservative values were very good indeed, like humility instead of excessive pride, respect for elders instead of disdain for elders, the traditional family unit. It had some issues, but in essence, it works. Delayed gratification, personal responsibility, a respect for earned hierarchies, modesty in the way that we dress, and decorum and manners in the way that we behave. Aspiring for a little bit of class and sophistication and style and grace, heaven forbid. A respect for the unknown and a humility around our achievements and limits to the human intellect. And dare I say it, a respect for God, or at least some kind of higher power, and the idea that profound order and design is at play in the universe. These are all fairly conservative ideas, and good ones. I also think drugs have a lot to do with the pure evil and insanity that we're seeing in these crimes. I think we've got a mental health crisis brought about partly by drugs, but also a culture drowning in ideological nonsense that leads to excessive permissiveness, tolerance of antisocial behaviour, and a decay in the enforcement of criminal law. It plays out in the anything goes culture in our media, where violence, criminality, and disgusting behaviour is all fodder for entertainment. Our heroes and villains and our heroes are villains and our villains are heroes in our TV shows. Our cinemas become shallow and thrill-focused, and the expression of our sexuality has become crass, vulgar and revolting. It plays out in our inability to be certain of even the most basic ideas of right and wrong. We can't even define what a woman is, for God's sake. And it all ties back to one ideology: radical left-wing relativism. There are no right ways to act and behave. Everything is equally good. The fix can only come when our parents, our educators, our media and our leaders in all walks of life really find the courage to grow up and lead. Set wise boundaries and enforce them. Stand up for what is right and speak out, even if at personal cost. As I said last week, immigration itself is not a bad thing. Most of us are the children of immigrants. But too fast, too many immigration is. And the UK and Australia have been riding that train like mad since COVID. 1.2 million new arrivals in the UK in 1 year alone. The same number in Australia across 2 years, and we've got less than half the population of the UK. Percentage-wise, that is recklessly irresponsible and frankly nuts. Now, Peter Dutton has called for an outright ban this week on arrivals from Gaza, and not surprisingly has immediately been branded as racist by Muslim groups and every Labor and Green and Teal under the sun, as 9 News reported this week.
Peter Dutton is raising the drawbridge.
I don't think people should be coming in from that war zone at all at the moment.
Since the October 7 attacks, 3,000 visas have been granted to Palestinians. 1,300 have arrived.
I think he is being essentially racist with those comments.
I think Peter Dutton's comments are irresponsible and dangerous.
Peter Dutton is the Tin Man. He has no heart.
Australia should be doing more to help people who are fleeing this catastrophic invasion.
Ah, Monique. Anyway, the term racist is losing its power. It's simplistic, childish and dumb to call anyone who questions anything racist. So now they turn to heartless. Peter Dutton, though, is right. We can't afford to let people in from hostile war zones without careful vetting. It's sad for those who are peaceful families, but the reality is that the terror risk is very high. 1,299 of the 1,300 Gazans coming here could be wonderful people. But if there's just one Hamas sympathising terrorist among them, we're in trouble. The left are again pretending that everyone is the same. All cultures are the same and equivalent and equally valid and right. Everyone in the world shares our values and way of life and upbringing and hundreds of years of history. It is a naive and foolish worldview in the extreme. And the question we've got to ask ourselves is clear. How much longer are we going to let Labor and the Greens and those awful Teals gaslight us by calling us heartless racists simply because we want to say, whoa, hang on a minute, we're taking in people from a nation that's been run by a terrorist government for the past 15 years. We're the only country that could take them in? Are people in a remote island nation halfway around the world with a vastly different culture, language and heritage? Seriously? There's not one Muslim-majority, Arabic-speaking nation in all of the Middle East that might be a better new home for these poor families? That's heartless and racist, if I say that? Well, according to our authoritarian Prime Minister, yes, it is. And you will not say it, and you will be told, and you will do as you are told.
Community leaders, politicians, the media, watch your words, watch your actions. There's a direct correlation between inflamed language, inflamed tension and violence.
Oh, yes, sir, your almighty seriousness, sir. I don't want E. Karen coming after me. That's terrifying. Better watch what I say. Better watch what we talk about on this show. Better watch what we talk about online. And then the same politicians sit back and wonder, gee, why are there riots? Guys, it's not the conversation that's causing the riots. It's the lack of conversation. When will you politicians get it? One man does get it, even if some of the weaker fools in his own party don't. Did they just not see what happened to the Conservative Party in the UK, these wet Liberal Party members? Dutton is right. Just because the elites in the Canberra media and the chattering Teal classes and Green commies and Labor lovies and Liberal champagne sippers are saying mean things about you doesn't mean that the boss is not actually much more tapped into the actual views of many Australians. And he rightly slammed all the BS that's been thrown at him on the Today Show later in the week.
Pete, good morning to you. Good to see it. Are you a heartless racist? Do you have any humanity?
I just think all the usual political tripe, put it to one side. We have to make decisions, and they can be tough decisions, but the decisions that are in our country's best interests. And we have one of the most generous humanitarian programs in the world, but people go through checks and verifications before they come here. If we have a well-managed migration program, it can work in our country's best interests, and that's been our experience largely in the past. But what's happened here, Carl, is that the government has brought people in from a war zone. In some cases, they haven't even done face-to-face interviews, and that is without precedent. 1,300 people have come here on tourist visas, again without precedent, and this all happened under Andrew Giles, who of course has now been sacked as the immigration minister because he was the guy who released 152 hardened criminals from immigration detention when it turned out he didn't need to do so.
Exactly. Do you seriously trust this government to vet and monitor these immigrants properly? Anthony Albanese wouldn't even answer the question in Parliament on Thursday afternoon when he was called on to give the specifics of the vetting process for those Palestinian refugees. The PM just repeated over and over that the visa processing safeguards haven't changed since the coalition was in power. But Mr Dutton says the process hasn't been applied as it should be. Private internet access is terrific. With all the big government clampdown on online speech lately, you are taking a risk if you don't have a VPN. That's a virtual private network that blocks spying eyes in government or marketing from seeing your IP address and hacking into your data. Now it's super easy and cheap to set it up. It's not technical, even I could do it. And the other side has secured a special deal for our viewers, which will get you set up for 83% off the usual price and with 4 months free. And get this, that brings the price down to less than $3 a month. It is amazing. So jump on it now, sign up to our special deal and help support us by supporting our sponsors. PIAVPN.com. PIAVPN.com/otherside. That's the important bit. /otherside to get the special deal. So that's PIAVPN.com/otherside. And even if you've already got a VPN, consider switching to these guys. Since I have, I've had zero reduction in my internet speeds, which was a bit of a problem with the one I was using before. And now I don't even have to think about this one. It's just on automatically whenever I'm on. So it's really great. PIAVPN.com/otherside. Hope you enjoyed that clip. The Other Side is your weekly analysis of the media's best news and commentary without the woke. And we need your support. Please make sure you subscribe to our channel on YouTube and follow us on X at The Other Side on X. It's all totally free to do that. But we could always do with your financial support too. So if you'd like to make a donation, click the Super Thanks button on YouTube with a little $ and thanks on it right under the video frame below. Even a $2 donation will really help us. And if you're watching on YouTube, do check out the full episode that this clip came from right here.